Time is ticking.
A jump ball. Damn. When jealousy meets envy, you get what you saw last night. Caitlin Clark being shunned out of the game, iced out of the game, ignored, teammates refusing to...
The final seconds are melting off the clock. The ball is moving everywhere except to the player fans are screaming to see with it. Amid the chaos, Caitlin Clark looks less like the centerpiece of the offense and more like someone who wandered into the wrong play. 1 second remains. The game hangs in the balance. The ball changes hands again, and still no pass. At this point, fans aren't just watching basketball. They're watching a mystery unfold in real time. Because when the biggest possession of the game ends like this, the question isn't simply who won or lost. The question echoing across the internet is far more intriguing. Who's really making the decisions when it matters most?
They put Caitlin Clark on the bench and sub her in with 4 minutes left in the quarter. What kind of momentum can a person possibly get? But they're not going to pass her the ball. They're not going to give her the minutes. It's the same crap. We knew that would happen.
A couple of years ago, one of the excuses that we were given as to why Caitlin Clark was left out of the Olympics, they insinuated that the Olympics were being reserved for veteran WNBA players who had more.
If you're enjoying the coverage, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps more than you know. A game that ends in a 40-point blowout is usually the kind of night everyone forgets by the final buzzer. The winning team celebrates, the losing team heads for the locker room, and the box score tells the entire story. Simple. Routine. Over. But somehow this game refused to follow that script. Instead of fading quietly into the schedule, it left fans talking long after the final horn sounded. Because despite the massive margin on the scoreboard, the biggest conversation wasn't about who won. It was about what happened during the moments that didn't quite make sense, and why a game that should have been completely straightforward suddenly became the center of controversy.
Last night in my reaction video to the USA basketball victory, of course, a total and complete mess from the perspective of wanting to watch Caitlin Clark go out there and do what Caitlin Clark does, which is 17-12 in her first game back in 239 days. But nah, of course, we saw that agenda at work right in front of our faces yesterday.
Even as Team USA cruised toward a comfortable blowout victory, the flow of the game kept hinting that not everything was as seamless as the scoreboard made it appear. On paper, it looked like complete control. On the court, however, there were moments that felt strangely out of sync. The lead kept growing, the result was never in doubt, yet the rhythm of the game continued to raise questions. Subtle decisions, missed opportunities, and unusual sequences kept drawing attention to things the final score could never fully explain. For fans paying close attention, the scoreboard told one story. The action unfolding between the lines seemed to be telling another.
88 last night, 3 of 12 shooting, 5 turnovers, 2 horrendous turnovers late in the fourth quarter, and they treated her like James Harden on the defensive end. They isolated her, went right at her, and what's Burton's first name? I don't know. It's another Veronica Burton turned her into a superstar last night, plus several other players. Do we have the clip? I'm sorry. I want to play the clip of, let's play SOT 3 where Kara Lawson.
From the opening minutes, the expectation felt straightforward. When a roster loaded with elite WNBA talent faces an overmatched opponent, the only real question is how long it takes before the game turns into a highlight reel. On paper, the outcome never seemed in doubt. The talent gap was obvious, and most fans expected Team USA to take control early and never look back. The focus wasn't on whether they would win, it was on how dominant the performance would look by the final buzzer.
Now this is in the second quarter, okay? Mind you, the second quarter. We're gonna go right back into what happened in the first quarter, right? So Caitlin coming out, giving some daps, right? Bang, bang, bang. Let's go team, boom, smack Mo. And we were waiting on Angel and nah, man. Hey, look, honestly, my honest take. All right, I'm giving.
Instead, what unfolded felt more like a team searching for its rhythm than one fully in control of it. The energy never quite matched the level of talent on the floor, and each possession seemed to take on a different identity depending on who was directing it. What made that contrast stand out even more was how different the pace looked from the stretches fans had recently seen with Caitlin Clark pushing the offense in transition. In those moments, the game felt fast, aggressive, and unpredictable in the best possible way. The ball moved quickly, teammates sprinted into open space, and defenses were forced to react rather than dictate the action. This time, however, everything seemed to tighten. The game gradually shifted into a half-court battle where possessions became longer, decisions became slower, and the flow never fully arrived. It wasn't a lack of talent. If anything, the talent was overwhelming. But the offense often appeared hesitant at key moments, as though players were thinking through every option rather than instinctively attacking. The ball circled the perimeter. Actions were reset. Opportunities came and went. And the tempo that typically defines Clark-led stretches rarely had a chance to establish itself. Instead, the game settled into a more controlled environment where creativity seemed to give way to caution. Naturally, that brought the spotlight back to Caitlin Clark. Not because she was lighting up the stat sheet, but because her presence tends to change the entire feel of a game. By her standards, the production was relatively quiet. Yet anyone watching closely could sense that the story extended beyond the numbers. The touches were inconsistent. The rhythm never fully developed. And just when it seemed like momentum might be building, the possession often moved in another direction. Those sequences quickly became the moments fans dissected the most, with every replay fueling a different interpretation. Some saw defensive pressure disrupting the offense. Others believed hesitation was creeping in during critical moments. And many argued it was simply the challenge of a talented group still figuring out how to balance responsibilities when multiple playmakers are operating within the same space. Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear. For a game decided by such a massive margin, the conversation afterward had very little to do with the final score.
Trying to diminish her. The wanker spankers on social media, they keep trying to give her princess crown to their self-proclaimed queen, Angel Reese. The mainstream media, they try to credit the unknown players in this dump of a league for elevating the WNBA into the mainstream. This is an equity league. Pretend basketball is for everyone. People aren't just watching Caitlin Clark, they are watching.
But the deeper story lives in the tactical details that rarely make highlight reels, even though they often determine the outcome. Puerto Rico's defensive approach appeared built around eliminating comfort at every stage of the possession. Off-ball movement was tracked closely. Relocations were met with immediate pressure. And whenever a potential scoring window started to open, a defender seemed ready to shrink the space before the opportunity could fully develop. From that perspective, it didn't necessarily look like chances were being ignored. It looked more like every option had to fight through an extra layer of resistance before it could even become available. The defense wasn't just contesting shots, it was disrupting decisions before they happened. Then came the sequence everyone would end up talking about. 1 second remained. The game hung in the balance. The floor suddenly opened, and Caitlin Clark appeared to have space beyond the arc with a chance to deliver one final answer. Instead, the possession went another direction. The ball found Aaliyah Boston inside, but the attempt didn't fall. The opportunity disappeared. The buzzer sounded. And just like that, a game that had been decided by inches ended with a possession that fans immediately began replaying from every possible angle. For many, the conversation wasn't simply about the missed shot. It was about the decision-making that led to it. Some believed the defense forced the offense into the only available option. Others felt a different choice was there in the closing seconds. And once a game ends on a possession that close, those debates rarely disappear quickly. What everyone agreed on, however, was the significance of the moment. Because when a game comes down to a single possession, every passing lane, every read, and every split-second decision becomes part of the story. And in this case, the final sequence left just enough unanswered questions to keep the conversation going long after the final buzzer.
We got Angel Reese taking it coast to coast, Caitlin Clark right next to her, refusing to give her the ball, going, pushing, giving it to Dearica Hamby, and the ball it's a turnover. What we saw yesterday was the definition of jealousy meeting envy. And the number one culprit of that, my darling.
The constant substitutions only added to the challenge. Just as a group seemed ready to establish some rhythm, another rotation would arrive, forcing everyone to adjust again. While that approach can serve a purpose, it also makes it difficult for chemistry to develop naturally. Instead of building momentum, players often found themselves recalibrating on the fly, and in basketball terms, that usually leaves an offense feeling one step behind its ideal pace. Amid that uncertainty, Paige Bueckers began to stand out. While much of the game felt like a search for consistency, she played with the composure of someone who had already figured out the answers. Her impact became especially noticeable in the second half, where she started creating scoring opportunities with a confidence that immediately changed the feel of the game. It wasn't that she suddenly took over the scoreboard. It was the way she played. Every possession seemed to have a purpose. Every decision came quickly. While others were still navigating the flow of the matchup, Bueckers looked completely comfortable operating within it. She attacked open space when it appeared, created her own offense when necessary, and consistently made the kind of reads that kept the defense reacting rather than dictating. In a game that often felt uncertain, she provided a sense of direction. What made her performance even more impressive was how controlled it was. Her scoring wasn't built on broken plays, fortunate bounces, or chaotic sequences. It came from patience, timing, and confident execution. She saw opportunities, trusted her instincts, and capitalized on them. And in a matchup where rhythm was often difficult to find, that level of decisiveness became one of the clearest differences on the floor.
People bringing up conspiracy theories, etc. I don't know what happened. All I know is if that is the offense that Stephanie White's going to put out there for the Indiana Fever, it's going to be a long-ass season having to sit back and watch that happen and watch handcuffs get put on our favorite player. I mean, that's going to suck. Do I want to be entertained? Yep, you betcha.
In a game where consistency proved difficult to find, Paige Bueckers stood out as the rare exception. While the rhythm of the offense shifted from possession to possession, she appeared largely unaffected by the surrounding instability. That ability to remain composed amid the fluctuations naturally elevated her performance in the eyes of observers looking beyond the box score. She wasn't just producing, she was providing a level of control that often felt absent elsewhere. Angel Reese's performance, meanwhile, told a much different story. On paper, there were plenty of positive moments. Her activity level remained high, she stayed engaged around the glass, and her presence was felt throughout multiple stretches of the game. Yet the overall performance carried a degree of inconsistency that made it difficult to evaluate through statistics alone. There were sequences where her physicality created advantages and generated extra opportunities. But there were also moments when aggressive drives into traffic met well-positioned defenders, leading to difficult finishes and possessions that stalled before they could develop. The result was a performance that flashed impact while still leaving room for questions about efficiency and offensive flow. Defensively, the same pattern emerged. Her energy was evident from start to finish, and her willingness to compete never appeared in doubt. At times, however, that aggressiveness seemed to pull her away from ideal positioning, forcing recovery efforts that could have been avoided with more disciplined coverage. It wasn't a disastrous performance, nor was it a flawless one. Instead, it was the type of outing that highlighted both potential and areas for growth simultaneously. As the game progressed, attention gradually shifted beyond individual performances and toward the broader question of execution. Late-game possessions, in particular, sparked discussion about spacing, timing, and decision-making. There were moments when the offensive structure appeared slightly out of sync with what the situation demanded, creating possessions that felt more reactive than intentional. Whether those issues stemmed from defensive pressure, communication, or simple execution errors became a matter of interpretation. What wasn't open to interpretation was the feeling left behind. For a game filled with talented players and memorable individual moments, some of the biggest conversations afterward centered on the details between the highlights. The spacing, the reads, the rotations, and the decisions that quietly shape outcomes long before the final buzzer sound.
But the main reason Caitlin Clark was excluded, it's because they were worried that she was going to steal the spotlight. They were worried that she would divert attention away from unknown players who wouldn't be properly identified by their parents. Jealous WNBA players who had been deluded into thinking that they are stars, they wanted the spotlight all to themselves. Now, of course, they got half of what they wanted. Caitlin Clark was left.
Some sequences felt slightly misaligned with the natural flow of the offense, particularly in key possessions where the expected read didn't fully match the eventual outcome. As a result, The group never consistently settled into its most efficient configuration at the moments when precision mattered most. Within that same stretch, part of the tactical frustration came from the sense that certain actions didn't fully lean into the spaces where Caitlin Clark is typically most effective, especially as the game tightened and every possession carried more weight. In those situations, execution becomes less about volume and more about clarity, and the lack of that clarity was noticeable at times. Transition opportunities, which often serve as a natural advantage, instead appeared more demanding than expected. There were stretches where simply matching the speed of play felt like a challenge, and the rhythm that usually defines fast-paced possessions never fully stabilized. Yet within that contrast, there were also moments of sharp defensive awareness that stood out. Even when mobility or flow seemed uneven, the ability to read developing situations remained intact. It created a dual impression of a player still capable of influence, but one operating within a structure that the tempo of the game continually tested. As the game progressed, a quieter but persistent storyline emerged around chemistry between players who are accustomed to being primary options in their own environments. It never became the defining feature of the game, but it was present enough to shape the overall fluidity of the offense across multiple stretches, subtly affecting how cleanly possessions developed from one action to the next.